This is What I Know to Be True So Far, the show that inspires you to awaken the magic within and consciously create a life and business on your terms. Join me and my guests as we share awakened experiences, the life lesson wisdom bites, and sacred practices that we've learned along the way to consciously creating the life we love. I'm your host, Kerrianne McKenzie, a multi-passionate magic maker, soul-led self-development expert, creative, nature connector, entrepreneur, and mother of 3 beautiful children and 1 very witchy black cat. I'm so grateful to have you with me on the journey with what I know to be true so far. So beautiful souls. Oh my goodness, it has been so long since I have been with my mic, and I can't even tell you how excited I am to be returning to what I know to be true so far and to be sharing all of the little updates in today's episodes. I'm going to kind of talk about the things that have been going on in my life, how things have been transitioning over the last 6 months, the redirection of the podcast, which isn't too much of a redirection, but just a little update on what's going on there. And also I'm going to share with you some of the tips or the real life experiences that I've been having with dipping in and out of your magic. So let's get into the episode. Welcome back. I'm so glad to be here. I've actually got so many amazing guests that I've been meeting with over the last 3 months, and I can't wait to share their stories. So let's dive right in and talk a little bit about who I am and what I do, because I think that sometimes people just see me as like a magical being and nobody really knows what is it that I do with all of my life and all of my time and my businesses. So I am Kerrianne McKenzie. For those of you that do not know me, I am a magic maker. I would say that I'm a bit of a mystic and I'm a creative, and I'm also a small business nerd. And that is something that I've not really spoken about a lot on this podcast, which will be part of a lot of the episodes coming up. How do we create a soul-led business that serves our soul and the world to make this place better and more beautiful and thriving with really creative, soul-led businesses that are changing the world? So I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happened since the start of the year. This is a long story, and I'm just going to touch on the big key points. When I started to sit down at the beginning of the year with my partner, we did this incredible process by Rebecca Campbell. We actually sat down and did like a life visioning exercise, or a visioning for the year ahead. And I had so many cool things come up in that visioning. Most of it was surprising to me because I'd kind of I'd just been focusing on my marketing business, and I'd taken a real step back from doing any of the life coaching stuff or the magical living coaching things. And a lot of what I saw had to do with kind of like a coming together of those two aspects. And I saw this incredible vision of myself with elemental symbols down my arm, and I was talking and teaching, I was running workshops, and I was doing lots of stuff that I kind of didn't have in my 12-month projection when I was looking at my business. And in that process, I got the flower, the daisy, which I just thought was really sweet and really lovely as a great symbolize, of the joy, the purity, the innocence. And I guess for me, that really meant stepping really fully into my levels of joy. And that's something that I love to do in my life, but sometimes the busy humanness gets a little bit in the way and I kind of get a little bit off track. And that's part of what I want to talk to you about in the episode later on, dipping in and out of your magic. And so I've kind of moved my business in 2 different ways, and one has led into sort of aligning what it was doing with my consulting work and my marketing business with soul-led businesses. So now Kerrianne McKenzie and my brand, we actually offer a done with you experience where I'm helping people build their soul-led businesses or restructure their soul-led businesses, and really marrying up that element of magic that we all have because we are in businesses from a soul perspective, right? We feel this desire and this calling to bring forward this work into the world. But there's this other aspect to that where it still needs to be a business and run like a business. And if you don't have a business background, it's really hard to understand all of those moving pieces. And for any of you that don't know my background, I came from corporate financial coordination and bookkeeping and business administration. And then I really moved into spirituality, and that was the area I focused on. And with both of those aspects in the background, I had also been doing a lot of marketing and so fascinated by the human influence that marketing can have to shape our idea of society, and how that kind of, has these elements of being non-ethical marketing, which is that real sleazy, gross marketing that really targets the deficit and the negative emotions, versus like conscious marketing and really using marketing as a way to connect with people and say, hey, I understand the thing that you go through. I understand the problems that you have. I have a solution for it. And here is how we can work together. And so marketing is a beautiful outlet for my creativity as well, which I'm just so obsessed with. I love it, love it, love it. So I have gotten into this place where I'm kind of like merging those two. And I've had been working with clients in the background in my marketing business, just solely with the marketing aspect. And what I noticed was a lot of what was missing was also like the financial planning and projections. And that's really hard to understand that stuff if you don't have a background in it. And what I know to be true so far is that this world right now needs more businesses that are soul-led having success. And so that's become a real area of focus of mine in the Kerrianne McKenzie brand and what I do even with this podcast, because I think that we're in this incredible era of development of consciousness on our planet where we can use our businesses for good. And I really want to support anyone who's doing that and really help them, not just with the values-driven, soul-led work, but also how do you make that successful for you, and how do you make that profitable? And that's even, that word profitable is something that we kind of lean away from a lot of the time in soul-led businesses, because sometimes we have attachments to, money being not spiritual, or having like, we steer away from that profit-driven idea. But my awareness of what makes for soul-led success is having that understanding that it's okay that your business works in both ways, of service and also for profit too. Because when good people have money flow, they use that money flow in good ways. They use it with small businesses that are making a change, and we redirect where the money flows, and that trickle effect of how our success creates a greater success for more conscious businesses and consciousness on our planet. So that's that aspect. And then I also deal with, obviously, magical living, which is really soul-led living. And I'm moving more into the soul-led living concept, although it's creating a very magical life. And I work with a lot of magical principles like the energetics and intention of everything we do, and being, coming from life with this really groundedness and centered in our soul's vision of what we want to see in our lives in the world. Magical living sometimes can just get mixed up with just the magical aspect, but I really work in the masculine and the feminine. So it is the intuitive, flowy aspect, but it's also the masculine. What's the actions that need to happen so that we can actually move the needle forward in creating the kind of success we want to have in our lives, but without the compromise of burning out, without the compromise of losing our magic, without the compromise of detaching from our intuitive guidance. So if you work with your own guides, like how do we live in this 3D reality and be of that, but still remain connected to the essence of spirit through everything that we do, so that we are really deeply connected with the flow in nature, and we are really deeply connected with our internal guidance system, and how do we live in that space. And so sometimes we can lean either way, right? We can get so far into the spiritual aspects. And I see this happen with so many people that I know that are super spiritual, is that they forget about this 3D reality, this existence in this present moment, because they're living very high up in the other dimensions, right? And then there's the ones who have a knowing or a connection to something, a spark within us, but we've gone so far down the do, action that we've lost the connection. So I'm really working with people to find that middle balance where we can be of the world and we can participate in this really amazing, incredible experience that is being a human, and also have that, deep connection to our soul as well, and allow our soul to lead us. And so one of the things that I'm so passionate about, especially at the moment, is really understanding what that balance is within my own life, but also with my clients' lives too. How do we stay in that space of duality, of being a fully participating human being in 3D reality without losing touch with our magic as well? And so I think I want to move a little bit. I could talk about this forever. I'm going to move on to, what the other kind of part of my life is, I guess, outside of Kerrianne McKenzie. I'm a mum. For those of you who don't know, I am a co-parent of 3 incredible children. And that comes with so many challenges, which I'd love to shed some light on as well, because I think it's really important just to really understand how that does affect our lives, and how do we show up for the small humans that rely on us daily, and also, live in that space of being a business owner, having healthy relationships, whether that's with friends and romance and, romantic partners, and also, really looking at our own experience independently from being a mother, and how that's influenced. My 3 children are my absolute world. And for half of my life, I live with them and I care for them on my own. And then the other half of my life, I am not. I am on my own because I co-parent 1 week on, 1 week off. And so I want to share a little bit of those kinds of experiences on the podcast, as well as things progress and I share through stories. And that really is, what this podcast is about, is sharing through stories, and then sharing the experiences that we've learned and what we've learned to be true from those experiences, so that other people who are listening can get their insights from hearing other stories, because I do believe we learn from our own stories and from other people's stories as well. And so the other aspect of me and who I am outside of my core brand and what I do with Kerrianne McKenzie and being a mom is I am also a co-business owner in a marketing and content production business, which I do with my partner, Tim. And that takes up a really big chunk of my life. It's a really huge part of my life that I don't often talk about. And I am the biggest business nerd in there and the biggest marketing nerd in there. And so I learn a lot of incredible things in that business that are really, I guess what you would call like different to the kind of work I do everywhere else. But it's a huge part of my life. And so I really want to be able to share some of the stories around that really nitty-gritty kind of business operation and management stuff in there as well. Still tying into all the magical stuff, obviously, because this podcast really is about all of the magical things. And it would be really lovely for me to be able to share that in this space occasionally as well. So I want to jump into, and now you know a little bit more about me, who I am and what it is that I do. Shall I share maybe a little bit about who I am personally and what I stand for too, before I jump onto today's little insight in what I know to be truth so far? So I would say that I am an expander at my core. Definitely. One of my friends said to me once, like, you are like a chameleon. Like, you can reinvent your life again and again and again. And I definitely know that to be true about myself, because where I come from, or the life that I came from, is very, very different to the life that I live now. And so, I mean, I'm from Africa, and I moved from Zimbabwe in Africa, and I moved to Australia when I was 4 years old. And I had a really crazy upbringing where I moved around a lot. There was a lot of, I would say, like, not typical living arrangements. So, I typically had a beautiful mum who gave me a beautiful home. She was a working mum. She had businesses, but we moved around a lot. I mean, I lived in Malaysia when I was 14 years old, and just so many different schools, so many different houses. And I was always adapting and changing. And I think that's where I have this skill where I can adapt and change quite easily. And when I finished school and I left school, I was a hairdresser and I worked for Vogue in Brisbane, and I loved it so much. But I kind of went down the wrong path. And I guess a lot of what I was doing at the time was masking or trying to hide this very mystical, spiritual connection that I had. And I'd always experienced, mind-blowing, unusual experiences with ghosts and spirits and all sorts of things. And I just felt like the biggest weirdo, and I wanted so badly to close all of that off. And how I chose to do that was really going down a pathway of substance abuse. And I really took my life in a horrendous direction for many years with that addiction that I had and problems that I had with addiction. And then I kind of got to a point where one day I just looked in the mirror and I just said, like, this is not my life. Like, this is not what I came here to do. And I had a lot of problems with eating disorders and addiction and things like that. And I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I was like a skeleton of a human. And I just was like, no, this isn't it. This is not for me. And I decided in that moment that I was going to get clean, that I was not going to be that person anymore. And I became obsessed with reinventing myself. And I really did that at many different levels. And I hear people talk about, their traumas and how their traumas change them and shape them. And I really know that, is such a huge part of my experience, because I really was just determined to not allow my traumas to be what defined me. And I used my experiences as a reason to change my life. And so when I was 23, I got clean off the hard stuff, and I was still using alcohol as a way to numb out a lot of my pain. But I became pretty high functioning, and then I fell pregnant, and my son was born. And I remember just saying to myself, I need to get it together. Like, this human freaking depends on me for life. This person is I'm responsible now for this baby and how its experience of the world is. And I was so determined to just not be my weird, wacky, nature spiritual version of myself. And I really wanted to just be like a normal person. And so I was like, what is the most normal work that I can do or role that I could fit into in order to be seen in the eyes of society as like having it together? And I was like, oh, I'll become an accountant. So a series of events happened which led me to that path of becoming an accountant. And I fully stepped into it and fell into it. I went for a job interview, and it was like, do you have bookkeeping experience? I'm like, yeah, sure. I've got some experience in that. And I had some accounts department experience, but like nothing. And she was like, do you know how to do like a P&L or profit or loss? And I'm like, yes, I know how to do all of that stuff. And then I got the job because literally there was no one else in this small town in Margaret River in Western Australia that could take the job. And I remember just going home and going, okay, here it is. Here's your chance. Here's your opportunity to completely turn your life around and become an accountant. Like, let's do this. And I just Googled, like, what is a balance sheet? And I Googled, like, what is a P&L? And I just studied my brains out until I understood everything so that when I went in on my first day, I knew what I was doing. And that is 16 years ago. And I literally just fell into this space and then gave it my absolute everything. And so I think that was really like the first time I realized I can reinvent myself completely. And then not long after that, we moved to the Gold Coast from Western Australia. And that is where I just hunkered down. I just decided I was going to continue down this path of really improving my life. And I did that for many years. I got a really incredible job with the coolest company because they were a startup and it was a property development company. And now that startup literally was like the story of like two guys in their parents' home. And the cool thing about that is that when I worked with that company, I worked underneath this guy, the CFO of the company, and the co-director. He was the most inspirational human. He was so mind-blowing to me because my experience of wealthy people was not a good one up until that point in my life, especially because my first boyfriend was incredibly wealthy and came from a really affluent family and used that to emotionally, physically, mentally abuse me, and it gave me this dislike to people with money. And so working for this man was mind-blowing to me because he was so kind and so willing to give me so much of his time to train me to be the best financial coordinator, to look at numbers in a way that enabled me to, look at a 12 to 24 month project and see all the holes in the financial flow and pinpoint problems before they happen, and forecasting in that way and being taught by someone who was so skilled, who also gave me the permission to like work it out on my own too. Like he had this amazing ability to just send me off and like give me a task that I had no idea how to do and just like send me off, allow me to work it out, and then give me feedback and train me and educate me. And he just invested so much time. And the years that I worked underneath him was the most expansive years for my understanding of business and business management, and also understanding of financial management too. And so I left that company because I had a spiritual awakening. My second son came around and I started to have like mind-blowing experiences around spirituality and spirits and things like that. And I was gifted with meeting like incredible people, like people are just planted into your life to help you evolve, develop, and grow into your best version. I had this incredible period of my life where I just met amazing human beings, and one of those human beings got me into yoga, and that really like opened my pathway up into the present moment and using energy and flow to support healing myself, but also just learning to slow down and learning to really be present with the energy and frequencies of existence, of nature, and all of those things. And she told me, you should meditate. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. And so I sat down to meditate. And as soon as I closed my eyes, I felt an instant connection to my soul. I had maybe been so disconnected for so long that I didn't even realize I had a soul in this other part of me that was so filled with love and support and kindness and compassion and all of these things. And I sat in silence for 15 minutes. And in that space, I connected with, a future version of myself. And I was standing in a field and there was a cow. And the cow walked slowly over to me and placed its head against my head. And in that moment, it was like, it's really even hard for me to describe now. It was like waking up completely to there is a totally different way of living. There is a totally different way of living. And I was like, I need to stop everything I'm doing and I need to find out what this is. I need to dive deeper into whatever this experience is where I'm connected to my soul. And I said to my ex-husband, like, I just want to move to the country. Like, I'm just supposed to live in the country. I need to reinvent my life. I don't want to be working 40, 50 hours a week doing accounting. Like, I want to slow down. I want to be with my children. I want to find a way to connect to myself. I want to discover who I am and figure out where I had lost the deep connection to the true essence of who I was, because I had spent so much time creating a role to fit into society. And now was my opportunity. And I had so many spiritual upgrades from the moment that I moved to the country. It was just one up level after the next, after the next, after the next. And there are so many wild stories from that time. My communicating with trees, connecting to Fae, me stepping into working with witchcraft and things like that. And all of that stuff is a huge part of who I am and will always be. But it was just so condensed in that time period. And so I have a lot of connections from the work that I did in that time, even now in my life. And it's shaped the work that I do now, because I feel like I work within those two polarities of being of that busy world, but also being and staying in the spiritual realm as well, and being able to balance those two together. So that was supposed to be a few minutes, that story. I think it turned into half the podcast episode. My apologies. What I think I wanted to segue into from my life story is that there's still moments that I think happen where I can get caught up in the busyness of my businesses and being a parent and all those things, where I dip in and out of my magic. And if you're like a spiritual person, you'll know what I mean. Like, you'll feel connected, everything's flowy, and you like completely tapped into the divine and the frequencies of nature, and like you're like in it and everything just feels sparkly and magical. And then you maybe get busy, or something might come up in your life, and all of a sudden you kind of step away from that flow of magic and you feel like you've kind of like lost your magic a little bit, and you get caught up in the 3D stuff. And I can go through like phases where I get super busy for like a whole week, and I'll forget that I'm magic, and I'll be looking for like the real manual human behavior solutions. And then I'm like, hang on a second, I'm freaking magic. I can sit down, I can connect to my soul, I can ask for the questions, I can get the intuitive guidance, I can wait for the universe to deliver, I can do all of those things as well as like be part of the normal busy stuff that's going on. And it's so funny, actually. I had a campaign that I was doing for a client a year ago, and I was trying so hard to just think. And then I realized, wait a second, you don't need to just think. You can actually go and connect to your creative force. And it was just this funny moment. I was like, wait, what am I doing trying to think my way out of this? I need to connect my way out of this. And I went and laid on this like rotunda near the ocean and listened to the ocean. And I was like, hey, help me. Give me some ideas here. And I was like turning on a tap. I just had this flow of so many creative ideas come through. And I was like, oh, that's right. I'm magic. I don't have to mentally think my way through everything, because there's a creative force out there that I can tap into at any time that's going to give me really cool answers and ideas and solutions. So just remembering that you are magic, and actually at any moment you can tap into that. All you have to do is remember, and then do the practical action steps that help you connect to your inner being, your soul, whichever way you prefer to use those terms, or even if you prefer to use, God or God nature, whatever you describe that as, where you feel connected to the real true essence of who you are and your magic. So for me, the tools that I love to do are obviously connecting to nature. I am a super advocate for nature connection, and I think we should be doing that on a regular, as much as we can, to really hone in that deeper wisdom that comes from being in nature. Another way that I love to dip back into my magic is to actually ensure on a consistent basis that my life is actually set up in a way that makes space for my spiritual practices. Because sometimes we We want to have like these 2-hour amazing morning routine experiences, but we've got kids and it's school holidays and all those things are going on. And sometimes it's just setting up the space for 5 minutes, or maybe it's a 15-minute process where you move for 5 minutes, you meditate for 5 minutes, you journal for 5 minutes. Like, set your life up in a way that doesn't make your spiritual practice an obligation and makes it easy for it to be part of your life. Another thing that I love when dipping back into my magic is continual learning. So that's not to say like you constantly like in that space of learning and not doing. I mean, sometimes when you're dipping out of your magic, all it takes is like a really great podcast episode by Rebecca Campbell to like snap you back into it, right? And to like go, oh, that's right. I'm a beautiful soul having a human experience, not the other way around. Well, it could be the other way around, a human having a soul experience, I guess. But yeah, to snap you kind of back into that, to remind you of that. There's a really great app that I love called Empower You. That's got a really great variety of different kinds of meditations, learnings, affirmations. Continual learning by reading as well. Like, even if you're just having a day where you feel completely disconnected, maybe just going and sitting in a garden and reading spiritual texts for 10 minutes, that can be really helpful to bring you back into your magical flow. And then obviously staying in the present moment. Like, our brains are crazy. It's like a toddler with a knife up there if you don't control it. And so remembering that at any point in time, we can just come back to the present moment using mindfulness tools and techniques and give you your connection back into your inner being and your soul. And then also a tool I love is journaling from my head to my heart. So that's really writing, like just taking a moment to sit down for 5 minutes and writing down all the insanity that's going on in my brain, and then asking the question, if these thoughts were being reconstructed through the lens of my heart space, what would I be thinking? What would I be accepting? What would I not be judging? What would I be learning to love about myself? And really tapping into, okay, right, I'm in my head so far right now, writing those racing thoughts down, and then just tapping into your heart. And you can put your hand on your heart when you do it, and just saying, if I was coming at this situation from a place of unconditional love from my heart, what intelligence would I be using to approach the same situation? And so those are all the little easy ways to dip back into your magic that I find are simple, because I just need everything to be simple, because if it's too elongated process, like, I will just avoid it, or I will become sidetracked with my ADHD and move on to something else. So making sure that when you notice when you're dipping out of your magic, that you start journaling a little bit about that too. Like, what's going on in my life when I feel like I am dipping out of my magic, and how can I use my easy practices, or what are my favorite tools? And so like, you might have 20 different tools that you've tried in the past. Like, pick a few of them and then put it on your mirror. And this is what I do. I put it on my mirror, and like, important things to remember, to remind you that even in your busyness of living in this 3D wildness, that you are a magical being, that your true essence and your true nature, which is of love, and which is of total acceptance and non-judgment and all of those things. All right, I'm going to wrap up this episode because it turned into a very long one. And I love you all so much. It is so freaking good to be back and to be sharing all of my stories and all of my wisdom. And I will finish off with what I know to be true so far, is that even in our most challenging times, and there are big challenges, being human is not easy, and I will always stand up for the fact that our human experience is not supposed to be perfect all the time. Even when we go through that stuff, we can also be in a space of staying in touch with our magic, and it nurtures us through with a little bit more tenderness and a little bit more care and love for ourselves, and connection to things that are greater and beyond our mind. And so I'll leave you with that note. I will talk to you all very soon. I've got some cool guests coming up. And if you want to be a guest on my podcast, please reach out to me. I love talking to people who have anything that they want to share through their experiences and their stories that have really shaped what they know to be true so far that they think can bring some kind of value to someone else. I love sharing those stories. Anyone who wants to check out my website, please go to kerriannmckenzie.com. You can go and have a look at all the things that I do there with soul-led living and soul-led business success. And head over to my Instagram at Kerrianne McKenzie, Kerrianne.McKenzie, I think it is. And I hope you have the most magical day and have those moments to dip back into your magic and keep on searching what it is that you know to be true so far.